All right, NFL season begins tomorrow night. Dallas and Philadelphia. Friday night in Brazil, because every NFL season should start in Brazil. The Chiefs will battle the Chargers. And then Sunday Fun Day in the Buckeye State. We're ready to go. Browns and the Bengals up in Cleveland, and we'll see what happens. Let's bring on our good friend, Browns Daily Dose. It is Steve King to the 1310 WDPN microphones today. Steve, good afternoon. I hope you're enjoying a beautiful Wednesday in Northeast Ohio. What's going on?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting, Sam, talking or hearing that, Brazil and Thursday night football, and this, that, and the other, and the Browns playing in, I think Germany later in the year. If all those people that sat around and discussed the possibility of having Monday Night Football 55 years ago, if they could see into the future and listen to what you just said, it would blow their mind.
You are not kidding. Steve, before we get into the Browns and the opener and Quinshon Judkins and Flacco and a whole bunch of stuff, you and I chatted a little bit last night about some stuff.
Yep.
And I did get I did get a couple of your musings via email, and I went back and I just read it again about your little piece in Browns Daily Dose that you wrote for Monday regarding Bill Belichick coming back to the sidelines and coaching with the North Carolina Tar Heels. And I thought it was really cool what you wrote about, the Browns starting against the Cowboys, Bill's first game, his first game with New England. Both of them were pretty rough, but that was a very interesting piece. And I wondered if you'd want to maybe go into a little detail about what you wrote about that, and just like the beginning for Belichick in the NFL and the auspicious debut in college.
Yeah, absolutely. Both on September 1st, as it were. He was the coach in '91 with the Browns. Their opening game at Cleveland, against Dallas at Cleveland, and a young coach that was kind of cutting his own teeth too. He's I think by that time he was a third-year head coach and just kind of building the Dallas Cowboys. A guy named Jimmy Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
So that day, I was amazed and I was heartened by the fact that, Dallas had the better players. The Browns of the late 80s, all those guys had gotten old. And so they were, they had come off a 3-13 season and Belichick was trying to put them back together. But, here's Belichick and Saban were just a step ahead of the Cowboys all day. And they didn't have enough to finish it at the end. But I was like, wow, those guys did a great job. And then you fast forward to, September 1st of this year, Monday, and there's Belichick and his son Steve is now the defensive coordinator, and there's Nick Saban is on the ESPN, analyst panel. Freddie Kitchens, the former head coach of the Browns, is the offensive coordinator. It was just surreal. And then there's Mike Lombardi, the general manager of college, something, you wouldn't have seen back then. And just the, and it seemed like Belichick and Kitchens and Steve Belichick were just a play behind the whole night. And that, you wonder, is that the beginning of the end for Belichick? It didn't look good, but, hey, maybe they were saying the same thing in 1991 when he lost to, Dallas that day. But it was interesting. And I said too, and we talked about this, the intrigue of Bill Belichick, the greatest head coach in the history of the NFL, if you go by Super Bowl titles, and I think we do 6, goes back into college and see what he can do in the college level, having never spent a day in college football, even as an assistant. It has the most intrigue since Monday Night Football, because there was no precedent. You didn't know the advent of Monday Night Football. Will anybody watch a football game on a weekday night? You got to be kidding me. Nobody's going to do that. Less than half the affiliates picked up the telecast.
Yeah.
And will Bill Belichick, how can a guy like that come into college? Oh, he's going to be great. Oh, he's going to be terrible. Just the intrigue, and you didn't know because there was nothing to bounce it off of. And it was, I enjoyed it. I think 8 of their games this year are national TV games in some
Uh-huh.
way, shape, or form, people. And I'm going to watch because you're not going to see this again. And I think that, they got 2 gimmies with Charlotte and I'm thinking Richmond or somebody the next 2 weeks. So try to get, right in. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think that they're probably digging their heels in and trying to prove everybody wrong. But it's a fascinating thing to see. It really is, especially for Browns fans, because you remember his start back then, 34 years ago. And now, now 34 years later, he's doing it in college. You just couldn't have conceived of that back then.
Steve, I got to tell you what, and this may turn some people off, but I was as excited to watch the Carolina TCU game with Bill Belichick on the sidelines as I was to watch Texas and Ohio State on Saturday.
Absolutely.
And that sounds like, what, are you out of your mind? But I really was. I watched all the pregame. I watched all the pomp and circumstance. I thought the setting in Chapel Hill was absolutely stunning. I mean, I even said on Twitter, so I said, man, if I could have a 50-yard line seat at Kenan Stadium right now, please God put me there, because that just looked fantastic. And yeah, they had a great opening drive. It was 7-0. All was right in the world, and then the wheels fell off. And Steve, I think we figured out, we learned a lot during the broadcast that, he brought 70 new players in. That's a complete new staff. They weren't going to go out there and beat TCU with Sonny Dykes, and they just weren't. But the hype was real, and I thought it was fantastic television. And I'm hoping that they win some games, because I'll be watching as well, because, sometimes you start really, really slow, and before you know it, they're saying, "Oh, this guy did it in the NFL. Now look what he's doing in college." I think it's going to be a fun ride. I really do.
Oh, they have eight home. I think the whole home season is sold out.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Makes the accountants real happy, and you have that, and you've got LT in up in the suites with Roy Williams and
Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and, just a host of other people, and it was just incredible, the scene there. I mean, like you said, you're not going to see anything like this again. So these people can hate on Belichick, certainly this, that, and the other, but it's made for TV viewing. Football is a game made to watch on TV. And it certainly was that, and much more on Monday night, because you could just see and feel it. You could just, the excitement and the wondering what was going to happen, and the expectancy, and just all that. It was palpable. It really was.
Yep, I thought so too. Steve King is our guest. Browns Daily Dose. Check him out. Browns Daily Dose does a great job. Great writings. Just every day there's just something really cool, and you don't want to miss that. Browns Daily Dose. Steve King is our guest. So,
Sam, can I interrupt one quick thing?
Surely.
You talk about former. I don't mean to interrupt you, but former Browns coaches. What I'm writing for tomorrow, Dallas at Philadelphia. Dallas's coach is Brian Schottenheimer. Maybe you've heard that last name.
Oh, yes.
And I was listening to an interview with him probably a week ago, and he was talking about, Micah Parsons and all that. And the longer I listened, it just all of a sudden it dawned on me, he sounds a lot like his dad.
Well, like
and
Marty, huh?
I just smiled about it. I'm rooting for him. I know he's up against it. I know it doesn't, you're working for Jerry Jones, and your best player has, gone on to, the division rival. But boy, I tell you what, conference rival. But boy, that's, I'm rooting for him. Man. I'm allowed to root for him, and I hope that he does well. And, hey, good luck. But he sounds, his voice sounds, if you listen again, sounds, and I heard him again today, just before we went on the air here. Sounds a lot like his dad, and that's kind of cool.
He sure does. He sure does. I'll root for him too. I mean, I've kind of been turned off by the way Jerry Jones does business with the Cowboys. And, I grew up being a Cowboys fan because that's all we had on channel 3, 5, and 8. Browns games were blacked out. I love watching Dallas, but now I'm like, I've had enough. But I'll root for Schottenheimer, no doubt about it. So speaking of that ball game tomorrow night, it'll be in Philly, and the Eagles will they'll get their Super Bowl rings, and there'll be all the glory and the pomp and circumstance and everything. Do you see any way any way the Dallas Cowboys go in there and win that game tomorrow?
Well, it'd be very hard. You never say never. You never say always, because there's these are professional football players. They're paid, but it's going to be very tough. I tell you the one, and Sirianni, Mount Union guy, doesn't get his due. And he's got a lot of good sense in him. They're not going, just like Ryan Day says, we're not defending anything. Well, he's picked that up too, the mantra, and this is again something started by Belichick. Hey, that's great. We won a championship, but that's in the past. This is the team. They're not going out for the unveiling of the banner, and because that's not something that they want to be part of. They want to focus on this season and repeating. They're not worried about last season. Now, if they were standing out there watching that and that hadn't happened, I think, you know what? Maybe they got caught up in that a little bit, but I think their heads are on straight. And that's a great offensive line that they have in Philly. They're defending Super Bowl champs. They're at home. That's going to be a tough nut to crack for the Dallas Cowboys. Anybody can win on any given Sunday. I don't want to sound trite, but that's true. But I tell you what, the Philadelphia is the real deal.
Yep, I think so too. All right, let's kick the can down to Sunday, 1 o'clock up on the lakefront. The Battle of Ohio, Cincinnati and Cleveland, round one. They'll meet in the last game of the year. That'll be coming up in January. But Steve, the Cleveland Browns, they've got their roster. They're ready to go. They tackled a little bit more in the preseason this year. I think the camp was a little tougher. At least I'm hearing that it was. What do you expect week one? And let's just keep it at week one, because we'll take it one game at a time, just like they tell us to. What do you see happening Sunday? Good, bad, ugly, indifferent? What's the Steve King crystal ball say?
Well, Cincinnati's got a lot of weapons, obviously, and it would be very easy to pick them, and maybe at the end of the day you do. But the one thing I like about the Browns is Cincinnati's defense is not good. Mm-hmm. Joe Flacco will find places in there to throw the ball. That is good. You got to put at the most important position on the field. They have a professional quarterback. Okay, they've got maybe the best defensive end in the game, and if Denzel Ward is able to play and stay healthy, they got one of the best cornerbacks in the game. Now, if you could take three positions and have the best player or a good player, you'd want those three positions. So I think it's going to be close. The Bengals have started poorly the last 2-3 years, and it's cost them in terms of not making the playoffs or not getting the seed they wanted. They're determined to come out and play ball. They have played more in the preseason they had in the past, and they got Trey Hendrickson, for one and done. It looks like, one more year, and he's. I'm concerned about him and about Shadur Stewart, the rookie defensive end for the Bengals, and I'm concerned who's going to block those guys, and and putting heat on Flacco, and I think Jack Conklin can do his job. But I'm worried about DeJuan Jones. Can he hold up at left tackle? That's, I think, really the key to the game. But I think Flacco is going to try to control the ball, keep that Cincinnati offense off the field, and make throws that will keep those drives alive, even if you don't score points. I think it comes down to the end, and you'll probably pick Cincinnati. But I will tell you what, I would not be at all surprised if the Browns won. And I know that sounds crazy, but this is opening day, and they're trying to get off to a good start. And it's such an important thing for a team that's trying to find itself, a team that still has a lot of holes, to get something big to happen in start the season that kind of give them a little confidence. And let's not forget, Huntington Bank Field is a tough place to play in terms of that crowd noise, and they're going to be rocking and rolling, and everybody is, have the audacity as hope of as Sam Bertigliano always wants to tell us. And so, I think it goes into the fourth quarter, but you got a guy like Joe Burrow. I think he's the number 2 quarterback in the game behind Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end he makes a play and wins it, but I would not be surprised if somehow, some way, the Browns 3-2, 50-49, or who knows what, find a way to get a win. Now, there might not be many more after that, but I would not be at all surprised if that happened. But again, you have to have, give Flacco time, and boy, he's got to find a way. They got to find a way to neutralize Trey Hendrickson, and he's really good. And if he gets his way in, passing, pass rush, collapse the pocket, the Browns have a problem. But you take Stewart and Hendrickson off the Bengals defense, and they might not be able to beat Manchester High School. So there you go.
Steve, I'm probably going to lean towards Cincinnati, but there is one thing I'm very confident in. I think there is going to be a boatload of points scored on Sunday. And you threw that out there 50-49. I could see that happening. These two teams have played a couple of games like that over the history of this series, and I would not be surprised if somebody got in the 40s, maybe 50 here on Sunday. You brought up the name DeJuan Jones, and I think is this his third year, Steve?
I believe so, yeah.
I think it's time for him. This is like a put up or shut up year for him. And yes, he's got to stay healthy. I think he's got the frame. I think he's got the footwork to be a really good offensive lineman. My question is, Steve, do you think he will be, and does that have to start this Sunday?
Oh, it absolutely has to start Sunday. And there's a great opportunity. He's lost weight. He's improved his agility. He did some work with the legend, Joe Thomas, and over, in the off season and through training camp, but just, so he's got that coming for him. And it's a wide open opportunity. They need a left tackle in the worst way. Ever since Joe Thomas, injured and out, they've struggled at that position. And so, I think he can. He's going to get a test when you're blocking every day in practice against Myles Garrett, depending on what side of the line he lines up. You're going to get better. You're going to get killed. Watt from Pittsburgh and Trey Hendrickson. So he's going to face those guys 4 times. So he better be good, or they're going to be going to Dylan Gabriel very quickly because Flacco's going to be in a sling.
The running game, we still don't have an official word on Quinshon Judkins yet. And obviously, there's no way in the world he's going to play anyway this weekend. What do you see out of Jerome Ford, and is he ready to bust out and take the next step? Because they're going to need him in a big way.
Yeah, I think he's a guy. If you remember a guy that played for the Browns by the name of Cleo Miller.
Yes.
Cleo Miller was solid. He was a good, solid running back. Ernie Green, a good, solid running back. And you know what? You can win with those guys. You can make plays with those guys. Now, what they don't have is the burst. They don't have the cutback ability. Quinshon Judkins, when he was, Nick Chubb, when he was healthy, those guys have that. So maybe you don't get a 65-yard run, but you get a lot of 5 and 6 and 7-yard runs. And it's going to be very important for them to be able to run the ball a little bit and move the chains and keep that Cincinnati offense on the sidelines. If it gets into the game and they're getting possession after possession and it's 3 and out, could be a long day.
Steve King is our guest. Check him out. Browns Daily Dose. That's Browns Daily Dose. Steve King, our guest here on the Sam Berkwin Show, 1310 WDPN. A win would do a lot. And look, we've all looked at the schedule. I just went down the schedule about a half hour ago, and it's a real possibility. I mean, this team could start 1-6, 2-5 if they're not careful. That's why I think this game is really big.
2-5, they might be delighted. Really, seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's murderer's row.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why this game is so important. But again, I look at both these teams and how they handled their preseasons this year. Both teams played their starters more in the games. They both actually, tackled during the preseason, during the scrimmages and the workouts with the other teams, and even up in Berea, they were taking guys down to the ground. What do you expect to see some kind of improvement, at least as far as that goes? That they actually came out and played football before the season started, get them ready.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it was Mike Tomlin made the comment. They call it tackle football for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You got to tackle. You got to get in there, and you got to get knocked down. And if somebody gets hurt, you don't want that, but you got to play these guys. So I think teams are going to be further ahead. I mean, you look at the history of anything in this country. It sways back and forth, but everybody was going to do this, and then they too much of that, so they swayed back and forth. It was used to play the guys all the time in the preseason, and now you don't play them, and now guys are finding, hey, we get to the first game, and it's like a first preseason game. Nobody knows what they're doing. They're not yet playing at game speed because they haven't had it, because you're playing at practice speed. So I think whatever you can get in there, if you can get in and get out and not get hurt, that helps a tremendous. So I think you're going to see a crisper game from both teams. The Bengals learned that lesson, and I think the Browns have, they've learned that lesson as well, because they got off such a horrible start last year, and the season got away from them, and there was nothing that they can do. And the only way you learn how to play football is to play football. You can't be stupid about it. You don't want to, play 3 quarters like they did back in the day, but you also don't want to, go into the game unprepared, because you get 17 chances, and you can't just fritter one away at the start or 2 and then expect to be where you want to be, because there's 17 chances. They all count.
They do. And they you got to cherish them, because they come and go in the blink of an eye. Steve, as always, appreciate the time. Hoping for a great game, a fun afternoon on Sunday, and hopefully a Cleveland Browns win. Always appreciate your time, and we'll be checking you out on Browns Daily Dose. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sam. Appreciate it.
There you go. Steve King, Browns Daily Dose, breaking it down here on the Sam Berkman Show, AM 1310 WDPN.